everything, and then have Rogelio say, hey, you look like you could star in a telenovela.
Hey everyone! So, the long-awaited audio recording has finally been released. The one involving Steve Sarowitz that Blake Lively has reportedly been using in her lawsuits. The recording was made by Claire Aub, who worked on a different project with Wayfarer. This is the same recording that references the statement Steve allegedly made about defending the studio in relation to the Israel and Hamas situation. We're going to listen to a portion of it. Claire is clearly very enthusiastic to talk about it, almost overly so. From the start, you can tell how eager she is to speak with him. Keep in mind, though, Steve had no idea he was being recorded. It seems like she went into the conversation intending to catch him off guard, or maybe even bait him. We'll all form our own opinions about that once we hear it. I'll play the beginning so you can hear how cheerful and complimentary she is. And then we'll skip ahead to around the 19-20 minute mark, since a lot of the middle section has nothing to do with the lawsuit. It's mostly unrelated chatter. Honestly, she talks a lot, and I'd rather not sit through all of that again. By the way, I'm not at home right now, so if my Wi-Fi lags a bit, I might turn the camera off to stabilize the connection. I actually found this clip on the Team Justin Baldoni subreddit, and shout out to Clark for tracking it down. It's also available on docket updates. I double-checked because we've been tricked by fake links before, but this one is legitimate. Alright, let's start from the beginning and then jump ahead after a couple minutes. Let me know if you can hear it. From the start, you can hear Claire saying how excited she is, laughing and thanking the team for being so wonderful to work with. She compliments everyone repeatedly and says she believes in giving people credit when they do great work. She sounds upbeat, grateful and confident, not at all nervous or frightened. Now remember, she's claimed that she made this recording because she was scared. But based on how she sounds, does that really seem true? She comes across as comfortable and genuinely pleased to be having this conversation. Later, they talk about the media, social platforms, and how quickly things can blow up online. She even jokes about rejoining TikTok for the film's promotion and admits it scares her a little, but she's doing it anyway. The conversation continues in a friendly, light tone. No tension, no hint of fear or discomfort. She praises the cast, the marketing team, and specifically calls out Ash for doing an amazing job. She mentions how helpful Ash had been early on, even creating promotional graphics for festival campaigns and press features. Everything about her tone shows excitement and gratitude, not distress. So just from the first few minutes, it's clear that Claire sounds genuinely happy and positive about her experience with Wayfarer. Her demeanor doesn't match the claim that she recorded the call out of fear. If anything, it makes the whole thing feel questionable and possibly manipulative on her part. And then she goes on to say she hasn't been paying attention to the media. Which honestly, who's going to believe that? Especially when there was another statement. I think it came from her declaration, where she claimed she made this recording because she was afraid. That's supposedly the reason she hit record, fear. But come on, if you listen to her tone and what she's saying here, that doesn't exactly sound like someone who's scared. It sounds more like someone who's in control of the situation and very comfortable. She also previously mentioned that she was aware of what was going on around It Ends With Us, so clearly she wasn't out of the loop. The whole thing feels inconsistent and awkward. I mean, why would you sign a legal document claiming you were afraid and then hand over a recording that completely contradicts that statement? It doesn't make sense. Then, as the call goes on, you hear her chatting about promotions, pay raises, and giving compliments left and right, saying things like, she's been a real dream to work with, and the whole team's been wonderful. She even praises Clay, saying there were no problems and that she's excited to see the space. Everything about the conversation feels casual and upbeat, not tense or fearful. Steve eventually brings up the It Ends With Us drama, calling it exactly what it is, a drama, and says he's done worrying about it. He acknowledges that people are going to think whatever they want, and at this point, he's just letting things unfold as they will. He talks about how painful it is when controversy overshadows the actual work and message of the film, especially when it's something you've poured your heart into. Listening to that part, you can tell it's frustrating for him. But what's really important here is what happens next. Because remember, Claire secretly recorded this conversation without his knowledge, and then she went on to voluntarily hand it over to Blake Lively. That's key. Blake wouldn't have even known about this meeting unless Claire told her. And according to what's been found, Blake produced this recording in discovery, not Claire, which means it wasn't obtained through a subpoena or any official request. So the only way Blake could have had it is if Claire willingly gave it to her. The discovery stamp even indicates it came directly from Blake's side. That alone raises serious questions about motives. If Claire really was scared, why would she share a private recording with someone who wasn't even directly involved at that point? The conversation continues, with Steve keeping things professional and friendly. He talks about how successful the film has been financially and praises the partnership with No More, saying how important it was to focus on the issue of domestic violence, not just in America, but worldwide. He emphasizes how meaningful it's been to center a story around such a serious and universal issue. He admits they didn't succeed in keeping the focus entirely on that theme, saying the public kind of shifted attention elsewhere, but he still seems proud of the impact. He even thanks everyone involved in funding the project, noting how grateful he is to have had a voice in the creative process because it's his production company and his intellectual property. Yet, despite all that professionalism and gratitude, you can hear Claire responding with comments that come across as dismissive, even slightly disrespectful at times, especially toward the person who literally helped fund and produce her dream project. As the conversation drifts toward future plans, she talks about not launching a fashion line, but instead focusing on social campaigns to amplify the work of people already involved in inclusivity and advocacy. She sounds genuinely enthusiastic, but again, none of this fits the narrative of fear she later described in her legal statement. At this point, there's still nothing incriminating or particularly significant, so it's understandable why people skip ahead in the recording to around the 17 or 18-minute mark. By then, Claire starts talking about her Wellesley Mafia, her college network, explaining how they were a huge reason she managed to get the movie made. She recalls how they helped amplify her script tour nationwide and supported her throughout the process. And then someone mentions reading the transcript and points out that Steve had indeed said something worth noting. But even so, when you hear the tone of the full conversation, it's hard to see how any of this aligns with the claim that she was fearful or coerced. The vibe of the call is friendly, open, and full of mutual respect, not intimidation or distress. At one point, she mentions that everything written in Blake's complaint is true, adding that Steve had said, "Israel protected itself. It doesn't matter who's on what side." And that's the key detail here. It's not that anyone's denying he said those words. The team has been clear that they wanted the full recording released so people could understand the context behind that statement. Because when you actually listen, the tone of the conversation tells a very different story than what the complaint implies. You can hear how Claire pushes the conversation in that direction, bringing up media coverage and politics again, despite having just claimed she wasn't following any of it. She keeps complimenting Steve and the team, talking about how grateful she is, how incredible the experience has been, how amazing everyone was to work with. It's all very positive, hardly the tone of someone afraid or uncomfortable. As the call goes on, she shifts to promoting the project, talking about events and networking with her Wellesley alumni connections. She's clearly excited, explaining how her college network helped her get the movie made in the first place and how they're organizing a worldwide watch party for opening weekend. She details how there are around 80 alumni clubs across the US and Canada, coordinating group tickets and encouraging people to post about the film. It's all upbeat, promotional, and celebratory. Steve responds warmly, offering to help fill theaters and ensure there's space for students from Humanity Rising to attend. They discuss coordinating screenings, with additional showings planned for the 29th and 30th. Everything about the exchange sounds friendly, collaborative, and completely ordinary for people working together on a movie release. Then she starts praising Rainn Wilson, saying how supportive he was during filming, how he made her feel comfortable, encouraged her ideas, and treated everyone on set equally, from lead actors to background extras. She describes him as someone who truly made the environment feel safe, inclusive, and positive. She even calls working with him a gift. And then comes the irony. She says Justin is the same way. She actually compares Justin Baldoni to Rainn, saying he runs his sets with the same kindness and respect. But this is the same person who's been publicly critical of Justin and claimed to have had a negative experience. So which version is true? The one she's describing here, where everything was great, or the one in her later statements? Because these two accounts couldn't be more different. Even when pressed, she admits she was on set and that it wasn't bad at all. She describes Justin as kind, loving, and deeply professional, saying his sets are never chaotic or toxic. She even laughs off the idea that it was a bad environment, confirming that what's been said about the production being problematic was completely false. So hearing that, it's hard not to question why she would secretly record this conversation and later hand it over to Blake Lively. It's not like she was forced to. This wasn't obtained through any subpoena. It was voluntarily turned over. The only explanation that makes sense is that she assumed the recording would never become public. Maybe she thought it would quietly bolster Blake's side without anyone actually listening to the full context. But now that the full recording is out, it's backfired completely. Instead of supporting the claims in the complaint, it undermines them. What we hear is someone cheerful, confident, and grateful, not someone intimidated or fearful. She praises the people she later accused, contradicts her own declaration, and exposes herself as unreliable. In the end, it's a self-inflicted embarrassment. She didn't have to turn that recording over, and doing so only made her look inconsistent and untrustworthy. Whatever her intentions were, whether for clout, validation, or leverage, it clearly wasn't worth it. Otherwise, damn, you're dumb. Didn't take Justin down. No. I'm hoping it's winding down. Fingers crossed. That's how the conversation began. A mix of exhaustion and resignation. Hollywood still had its grip on everything, someone said, noting how things had gone quiet again. August, man. August. There was mention of a TikToker. Someone loved her content because she broke everything down with such clarity, teaching people how to be better consumers of information. She was probably in her 50s, analytical and smart, the kind of person who'd dissect declarations line by line just to help people understand what they were actually reading. "Somebody should have done that with your declaration, Claire," one of them joked. When everything started blowing up, it felt overwhelming. "Oh, Jesus," someone said, recalling being in Chicago for a friend's wedding that weekend, just having rejoined TikTok to share a trailer, and then suddenly realizing something huge was happening online. "I've read more now," they added. "Never was on TikTok before, but I've read enough." The consensus was that TikTok and Instagram seemed to lean pro-Justin, while Reddit, though more balanced, had its own toxicity. "Reddit can be so mean-spirited," one admitted. They talked about how, even in supportive corners like plus-size fashion communities, there were still dark spaces where people went just to be cruel. Someone confessed they used to be one of those harsh Reddit users, posting snark about reality TV before realizing that real people lived behind those shows. "Once I got to know some of them, like Clayton," they said, "I realized they're not who you see on screen. They're actual human beings. I should stop being such a jerk." That experience opened their eyes to how Reddit, and online culture in general, lets people feel justified in being terrible toward others. The talk shifted toward parasocial relationships, how people form emotional attachments to public figures they've never met. Chappell Roan came up as an example, an artist who'd recently spoken out about being stalked and harassed by fans who felt entitled to her personal life. "It's not okay," she said on a podcast. "You don't know me." Her point resonated deeply. Fame doesn't mean ownership. Being a fan doesn't mean you're owed access. Yet people often convince themselves otherwise, projecting their hopes and insecurities onto strangers. "It can be super scary," someone said quietly. Then the tone softened. "Are you at least taking a vacation soon, Steve? Rest your brain?" "No," he replied. "I'm okay, though. Jamie's the one working till 11 at night." He described the stress of thinking they might have to go to court, a situation still looming. "If they push us to the limit," he said, "then we'll go. And when that happens, it's all on me. I'll have to protect the studio." That's when he made the controversial comment. "I'll protect the studio like Israel protected itself from Hamas." He hadn't known he was being recorded, and it wasn't meant as a violent statement. It was a metaphor for standing firm, for defending his team if things escalated legally. Some might find the comparison insensitive, sure, but his intention wasn't malicious. It was about responsibility, not retaliation. He was talking about being ready for a long, exhausting legal fight, funding lawyers, and shielding his colleagues from the fallout. In truth, his words were being taken out of context. He wasn't ranting about revenge or aggression. He was trying to express determination under pressure. To him, it was about loyalty, defending what he'd built and the people depending on him. Whether one agrees with how he said it or not, it wasn't the weaponized statement it's being made out to be. It was a stressed man's way of saying he would stand his ground when everything else was falling apart. She set him up for that moment and later gave the recording to Blake voluntarily. During the conversation, he said, "There were 39,000 dead bodies. There will be 2 dead bodies when I'm done, minimum. Not literally dead, but dead to me." It was clear from his tone and follow-up that he meant reputationally, not physically. There was nothing truly threatening about what he said. No credible or imminent danger. Sure, some could find the wording harsh or insensitive, but it wasn't a threat to anyone's life. In full context, his point was that he'd spend whatever it took to protect the studio. "Worth their while," he said, "because I'm going to spend a lot of money to make sure the studio is protected." Then he added, "I don't think we'll go there." The others agreed, hoping things would de-escalate. "That's not the world I want to live in," someone said. "I just hope it goes away. People lose interest, realize it's hurting everyone's career." But another voice cut in. "This isn't going away anytime soon. We'll have to be defensive for years. There'll always be something coming at us." He promised, "If they ever cross the line, I'll go after them. I'll defend us." Jamie had even called earlier saying, "We're going to need you." He simply described what was happening. They feared being targeted or ruined, and he was ready to fight back within legal means. "That's not a threat. That's self-defense." Blake tried to portray it differently in her deposition, but that was misleading. Their team already had lawyers and PR people lined up, though luckily they hadn't needed to use them much yet. "That's a good sign," someone said. "Nothing's really hit the studio. People still love Justin." And truly they did. "If you meet Justin, how could you not love Justin?" one asked. "I know," came the reply, followed by, "I'm just sending all the good energy." But listening to her voice in the recording, how she steered the conversation and secretly taped him without his consent, then handed it over to Blake, was unsettling. It was calculated, almost manipulative. The talk drifted to safer topics. "You're lucky," one said. "You had a production like that." He agreed. "Almost all our productions are like that." Then, with an ADHD-like tangent, she asked, "Wait, I heard the Hurricanes trailer premiered on NBC?" "Yes," he said, laughing. "They mentioned it in our meeting Tuesday. It's so exciting." It's so exciting. "I can't wait to see it. It's right up my alley." They began discussing film projects, the new documentaries, the ones in festivals. "We're playing Hurricanes Daruma, a film about disabled people, Sugar, and Bull Street next," he said. She asked if he'd always wanted to open a movie theater or if it was something that had grown on him. She mentioned a friend, a brilliant product manager at Warby Parker who was trying to switch careers and open her own theater, asking for advice to pass along. He smiled, amused. "What's her job now?" She explained her background, a genius creative type, based in New York, once lived in France, maybe planning to move to Barcelona. They'd met at a theater festival years ago. "She's the kind of person who supports other creators like it's her mission," she said fondly. "Movies are how she gets through tough times. She doubles her cinema visits when work gets hard and dreams of sharing that joy with others." He thought for a moment before responding. "Here's what I'd tell her," he said finally. "People aren't going to movies like they used to. It's been a challenge for me. I've lost a lot of money." The conversation ended on that note, an honest reflection on the cost of creativity, trust, and the strange loneliness of being watched, recorded, and misrepresented, even when you're just trying to protect what you've built. He went on to explain that he didn't believe movie theaters were dying. "They're not going away," he said. "The Renaissance will come, but you have to have an angle." She agreed, admitting that her friend didn't have the money yet to withstand hard times, but was eager to learn how to run a theater and build toward that dream. He advised her not to jump in until she had a financial cushion, reminding her that it was essential to understand the practical side, the paperwork, accounting, and costs that keep a project sustainable. She admired how open he was, comparing the way he talked through logistics to the way she worked closely with her lawyer and accountant to fully understand the meat and potatoes of any venture. When she asked how she could support Wayfarer theaters, he told her simply to give them a shout-out or make a video. She immediately agreed, promising to work with his team on it. They talked excitedly about the upcoming screening, how thrilled she was to host it there, and how special it would be to share the space together. "You're going to love the theater," he told her proudly. She said she already loved theaters, that they made her feel safe, like she was about to explore another universe. He described the space in detail, a hologram of Justin, Jamie, Tara, and himself welcoming guests, a community board at the entrance, and a Baha'i-inspired ceiling with a 9-pointed star. The lobby had been fully redone with a large screen showing Wayfarer films, a cafe, and a small replica of Lily Bloom's flower shop. At the end of the hall hung a sign reading, "Where there is love, nothing is too much trouble and there's always time." It was a gentle spiritual environment, open, welcoming, and intentionally free of violence or horror. "We only show uplifting films," he said. "Mostly stories of women, empowerment, and hope." She told him it was beautiful. Then, shifting the conversation, she asked how far DePaul University was from the theater. She mentioned a friend who taught there and thought it could be a great collaboration, student screenings, short film showcases, or creative workshops. He agreed enthusiastically, saying he loved the idea of connecting with schools and local creators. She offered to reach out to her network in Highland Park, especially to help young filmmakers, kids of color who were creating films on their phones and would be inspired to see their work projected on a big screen. Throughout, she kept gushing about the Wayfarer team, their projects, and their mission. She said her filmmaker community had been her biggest source of support and that she wanted to give back by helping others find theirs. They discussed the importance of community in art, the need for spaces that foster connection, learning, and inspiration. He spoke about the challenges of keeping such spaces afloat financially, but also about how deeply rewarding it was. Despite how the recording was later framed, the conversation itself was warm, collaborative, and filled with mutual respect. He came across as thoughtful and passionate about his work, and she sounded engaged, comfortable, and even eager to stay involved. There was no fear, no hostility, just two professionals talking about creativity, purpose, and the shared dream of building something meaningful. She spoke with enthusiasm about the early screenings for her director's cut, remembering how half the people there were part of that process when she was gathering feedback. They all supported one another deeply, she said, and building that kind of creative circle early on as a young filmmaker was invaluable. She talked about the importance of creating spaces that foster connection, especially since the theater had a cafe. She imagined it becoming a casual meeting hub where filmmakers could hang out, share ideas, and collaborate. She even had an idea for a board where creatives could post opportunities, directors seeking cinematographers, editors looking for sound designers, turning the cafe into a supportive incubator for film talent. They both agreed there was still a lot of work ahead. He laughed about the long days, but told her to go enjoy her break. She thanked him warmly, saying it was great talking and that she hoped things would calm down soon. They exchanged goodbyes, promising to see each other in person in a month. Both sounded genuinely excited. She said she'd send him new material soon, and he said he couldn't wait to get the film out into the world. He admitted he'd been disappointed when it looked like they might not have any screenings, but was relieved that things were finally moving. She agreed, saying it was tough because it was such a small-budget film with a big ensemble cast, and they were lucky that Blue Fox was putting in so much support. They discussed plans for a New York screening and how he might bring a few more cast members so they could all reunite, celebrate, and maybe even go out for karaoke afterward. That, she said, was what made it all worth it. Community was everything. He told her the reaction to the project had been incredible worldwide, far beyond what he'd expected. People were calling it a sleeper hit, and she agreed, saying it would be great to have another success story for Wayfarer.